Joining me live now to discuss some of today's top stories is former federal Liberal MP for the Victorian seat of Menzies, Keith Wolahan. Keith, thank you so much for joining me. 2 weeks on from the Bondi tragedy, we've seen opposition leader Sussan Ley say Parliament should be reconvened immediately to pass some of those laws to combat anti-semitism. What's your take?
I think Sussan Ley is right, and not in a partisan sense, just in that she's showing the leadership that we desperately want the Prime Minister to show. There's a sense of sadness that this event has been put in a box and it's going to stay in 2025 as just another thing that happened in 2025. It's not. This is our worst ever terrorist attack in Australia, and it hasn't been treated with that sort of seriousness by the Prime Minister or his ministers. And that's why Parliament needs to be recalled so we can get moving on things like the Royal Commission.
You've been really vocal about the need for one. We know at a state level, Chris Minns is happy to hold a Royal Commission. Does that suffice in your view? Are you worried about the ability to examine federal agencies?
It doesn't, for two reasons. One is that the scourge of anti-Semitism and terrorism are a national issue. It's not just for New South Wales, and I'm speaking to you from Victoria. We're worried about what's been happening here too. But there's a legal aspect and a constitutional aspect to this that we need to consider. State Royal Commissions, there's a question about whether they have the ability to subpoena documents or to call witnesses and not have that delayed through court procedure or just simply not turn up. We've seen that in other state royal commissions. You might recall the Ruby Princess Royal Commission. Despite the then Prime Minister committing for the Commonwealth to cooperate, the Commissioner expressed in his final report deep frustration that the Australian Government solicitor prevented many of the Commonwealth agencies from adequately appearing or the documents not being redacted. So we sadly have recent experience of state royal commissions not being good enough. So we need a federal royal commission for those two reasons.
The Prime Minister's been pretty adamant he doesn't want to call one. Is this issue going to go away?
Well, when you look through royal commissions, sadly, the governments are always dragged kicking and screaming to them, and the Prime Minister should know this. Again, I'm a Liberal, but let's put our hand in our heart and say the Liberal government was too slow to call the Banking Royal Commission. The Liberal government was too slow to call the Royal Commission into veteran suicide, but they did get there. Now, the Prime Minister was there on media, in the Parliament, holding the government to account for that. Now the shoe is on the other foot. He has the power. He has significant majority in the Parliament. It is now on him to call this Royal Commission. We've had 140 Royal Commissions at a federal level since Federation. 140. You would think that our worst ever terrorist attack warrants one. And Julie, there's another reason I think we need to have this. The Prime Minister seems to be rushing towards clamping down on civil liberties. And there are, of course, things that we should do about particular aspects of hate speech. But I think we need to carefully analyse that. And I would like to see a Royal Commission look at overseas experience and actually connect those dots as to whether restricting civil liberties, which we should always do with caution, actually is going to do what people say it will. And I suspect that they'll find that it doesn't.
You're not convinced cracking down on hate speech will help address the issue?
If only it was that simple. If only it was that simple. When you look at other countries that have more authoritarian or restrictive hate speech measures, they still have terrorism. I don't think that's the simple answer that many would like it to be. If it is, of course, we should look at that. But that's why we should have a Royal Commission rather than just a press release. Because we defend our civil liberties. We've gone to war for defending our civil liberties. So we should give them up only when we know that they're for a proper purpose. And I would like to see international experience tested in a Royal Commission.
So what action would you like to see at a more immediate level then?
I think at a more immediate level, we need to see leadership from the Prime Minister. And again, that wasn't shown from the moment that protest happened outside the Sydney Opera House. What we needed was the Prime Minister to say, I get it. I recognise that this is a stain on our national character, and to stand up and do something about it. He was missing in action then, and he's been missing in action ever since. So we want leadership from the Prime Minister. He's the one who holds that title and is in the office. And again, he's been missing in action.
What do you think he should do now? We're hearing more of those family members of victims of the Bondi tragedy come out to criticise the Albanese government. Where to from here? How does he show that he stands with the Jewish community?
There's only one test for him right now, which is to recall Parliament early and to pass the terms of reference for a federal royal commission. Anything less than that is not good enough. And I think he should be held to account for that throughout this term if he's going to be stubborn and bloody-minded about it.
We've seen the Labor Israel Action Committee telling the New South Wales Labor Secretary in an explosive letter that anti-Semitic attitudes within the Labor Party need to be stamped out. What do you make of that?
I'm not surprised, but again, anti-Semitism exists throughout our society and has existed throughout history. So full credit to those in the Labor Party who have come forward to say that. And again, full credit to Labor backbenchers who've called for the Royal Commission, or Labor members and former members who've stood up and said they want the Prime Minister to do better. I don't want this to be a partisan Labor-Liberal issue. We want national leadership at this time, and we need it from the Prime Minister.
You've spoken about crackdown on civil liberties not necessarily being the answer. Would you make of the New South Wales Premier's moves then in the weeks gone by?
Well, it concerns me. He's shown great leadership, and again, it's in contrast to the Prime Minister. But again, if only that was the answer to combating this, if only it was. I'm not convinced that it is. And again, we should always tread carefully when we're restricting freedom of speech or freedom of movement. There's compromises that you can do. For instance, blanket bans on protest. That's a really strict thing for a democracy to do. But there is a time and a place for protests. I'm here in Melbourne. We see them weekly dominating the city. I think that is pushing the envelope too far. But if there was designated places at designated times and you had boundaries on overt hate speech, then that's the sort of compromise that I think fair-minded people in a liberal democracy will and should tolerate. But we should tread carefully on finding out where that line is.
We're just running out of time, but before I let you go, your friend, former colleague, Liberal MP for Higgins, Katie Allen, recently passed away after a long battle with cancer. How will you remember her?
I got to know Katie particularly well on the recent campaign, Menzies and Chisholm, where she was the candidate. We're neighbouring, we had very similar constituencies. So we were at a lot of events together, and I was desperately looking forward to being in the Parliament with her. I looked over, as you do when someone passes, the recent text message you'd sent to each other. And one of the last ones I did, I said, "Oh, it was so good to see your smiling face on a trip that she had with her family." And she said, "I'm trying to squeeze every living minute out of life." And if that's Katie, and if that's a message she can leave amongst many other things that she's done as a doctor, as a parliamentarian, as a mum, as a wife, then this world is better for Katie having been in it.
She was a wonderful woman. I greatly enjoyed doing stories with her. Keith Wolahan, thank you so much for your time.